share the screen with my few slides. Hopefully it's working. Tell me if you see it in the presentation mode.
Now it's in presentation mode.
Yeah, okay.
Now it's perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, a few words straight following what explained by Ulrike for the Green Lab as a whole and by Martine with regard to the road mapping, strategic road mapping and first scoping. This is the following, let's say, the subsequent work package, which is in charge of the three calls that are planned within the Green Lab time frame. So you see, transnational calls for research proposals in the Green Lab in general, but with a special focus, of course, on this first joint call, which is the closest in time, of course. And first, just to connect with the previous presentations, yes, these three calls will be implemented by under the Green Era Hub, of course, to provide funding for research innovation projects, focusing on the thematic areas that are of interest for all the networks included, represented, say, by the Green Era Hub. This means that interfaces, synergies, overlap areas are, of course, very important for us to analyze together with the funders in order to identify these topics of general interest, but also capable to address individual networks, but also individual funders' needs, expectations, and also possibilities to fund. This is the work package 3 team, let's say, is made by BLE, Mazaf, Yulich, and Chagash. Mazaf is the coordinator, the leader of the work package, and then Mazaf itself and the other three partners, we have individual tasks, leaderships, for the preparation of the documents, the launch of the call office, selection of projects, and so on. Well, okay. Yes, now it works. You see here the orientative indicative timeline of the three calls. In green, you see the periods and the activities for the preparation of each call launch. And then when the call is launched, you have in orange the subsequent timeline for the call office, selection of the calls, and so on. So you see that the three calls will span over 3 years of activities, and this means that we have, of course, timelines are not written in stone. Even this first call was a bit anticipated in vis-a-vis the original planning, but nevertheless there will be, of course, at least more or less 1 year from one call to another, which means that we have to plan. We can plan already to consider in advance what will be the topics of the future calls, but the real topics will be identified at the right time, of course, when also, in particular with regard to the second and the third call, the other partnership, the partnerships, sorry, not the others, the partnerships will be already established and working. So this is something very relevant for us to consider. Also looking at the, of course, the overlapping of topics or synergies, the capability and willingness of the funders to fund different calls from partnerships and for the Greener Hub. This is a focus on the first call, and you see the preparation of the first call is already, of course, started immediately after the kickoff of the Greener Hub, and we'll went into the hot activity in the first months of next year. The expected time for the launch of the call is, let's say, end of April. It could be a bit anticipated or a bit delayed. And then we have, of course, the submission phase along that will go on the summer, and evaluation and selection in the end of summer and autumn. As you see, the partnerships, I mean, the relevant partnerships for our remit will start quite later on. So this first call is actually really a bridge, filling a gap, let's say, between the end of the termination of the activities of the previous networks in terms of creating new calls, issuing new calls, and the beginning of the call activity of the partnerships. For the second and third call, the situation will be probably different. And this is the point I was mentioning. Again, here you saw the logos before. The aeronets and GPIs are represented in other activities. Coordination networks are represented in the Greener Hub. Just to remind again how wide and diversified is the range of potential interest topics and investigation areas that we should try to coordinate, to harmonize. This wideness is, of course, a richness, a challenge. We have to be aware of the limits of the possibility in each call to address everything. But we have 3 calls, so we can also, thinking at the first call, planning also in the light of the future potential of the second and the third call. A few words in relation to the scoping process for the first call in particular. This is a similar kind of summary with some additional elements to what Martina said from the work package 3 point of view. So Martina clearly explained the process from the work package 2 perspective. So they are performing in coordination also with us and with the overall coordination of Greener Hub, various scoping or road mapping processes. Desk analysis. We had the workshop in Ghent. We have the survey for funders, and Martina already showed the preliminary results. And we have this meeting today. In parallel, and this is a very important element, some networks can and some networks are organizing themselves to develop scoping processes or for the identification of thematic areas that can then be considered within the Greener Hub real scoping process. These, in particular, I will present in a few minutes, in the next slides, the outcomes, the first preliminary outcomes of an exercise that was carried out by 3 networks, SAS42, Core Organic, and FOSC. These activities, this one and other possible similar activities that are being organized by some networks, are not Greener Hub's activities in themselves. They are not held under the Greener Hub umbrella, but they provide key inputs for the definition of the topics and the themes. That then these outcomes are carried on board by work package 3 for the definition of the call scope that will be an exercise conducted within the Greener Hub, but on the base of these materials. At least for this first call, this is the approach, in order also to be pragmatical and to work on existing needs and desired, investigation areas by the existing networks and the funders. These results will converge into one topic of the call, into one of the topics in case there will be more than one, because of course the point is that with a wide range of networks and funders potentially interested, the range of themes could be quite wide, and this could mean that we may have one topic or several topics, one topics with subtopics and so on. Also, the availability of funders to participate in a call could depend on the topic that is funded, and so the possibility to have different topics to allow more flexibility for the funders will be evaluated on the light of the outcomes of the scoping process itself. So in January, the real call process under work package 3 will start with a dedicated scoping workshop and other related activities showed in the last in the slide before. Last words. So this is in regard with the process. Last words on preliminary outcomes of this joint scoping workshop held on the 17th of November by Organic SAS Food 2 and FOSC. You see here, I'm not going into detail, but it can be just an overview, a useful feed for thought. Also because these three topics address quite a wide range at the agricultural and food system, in the agriculture and food system remit, from primary production to the system approach to environmental and climate change, sustainability and resilience issues. So it was already, I think, a good test also for the wider landscape of networks. Highest priorities were given to climate positive farming and food. So this was quite strong interest on mitigation and of climate impact of agriculture and food system, and circularity, circular food system. I should say that also talking with Martina and the colleagues in charge of the various activities, that circularity is really emerging as a cross-cutting issues of interest from the various sources, from this workshop, from the survey and so on. Waste treatment, side stream utilization, and the circularity from the design of the food system is really a key element of interest. High priority was given to the consumption side, the social impact and the social implications of primary production and food system, food networks, consumer and consumption in particular, energy efficiency, but also energy reduction. This say complementarity of being efficient in the use of resources, but also being capable to use less resources. The last point is, of course, a cross-cutting element, very much debated and already addressed by some calls: robustness, resilience, adaptive capacity in the light of stresses and shocks that impact on food system, again in relation to diversity. Diversity is an element of that can strengthen resilience and robustness, but not only diversity, of course. Also, a potential topic emerged, could be the title, could be the title of the call, could be the title of one of the topics, could be subtopics or whatever, but these emerged like a catchphrase, let's say, sustainability and transformation of the food system. And you see here kind of elaboration of what we showed before. Potential call topics were energy use, resilience, climate-friendly, sustainable food systems based on organic production, on green production methods, circularity, side stream waste management, and alternative protein sources. This is also a kind of form of that an emerging issue, very important, alternative, new, diversified protein sources, again, that links to diversity on one side, to circularity on the other, and so on. These are the four core topics really emerging. Plus, this is the last slide, the workshop highlighted some cross-cutting issues, the need for projects to include the valorization plans and reserve budget for it, in order really to create impact on the real world out of the projects. The adoption of a systemic approach, multidisciplinary and multi-actors, this is always repeated, but it's very challenging, but it's even more important and more, spontaneously emerging from these wide networks network of networks that is making this exercise. And different scales should be addressed by the topic, by the projects, maybe within the same project or individual projects that can address different spatial and different temporal scales, because different scales addresses different challenges and require different solutions. And then consumption side, I already mentioned. Very last slide, what is expected by today in relation to what I presented. An expression of interest of the funders for this first call, which is already really on a fast track, which preferred or required condition can emerge in relation to the topics that funders can fund, timeline, procedures if they prefer one step or two. One step is at the moment preferred because of the fast track that we are implementing. If there are other conditions, suggestions, of course, for other topics of interest, that of course the scoping workshop and the scoping activity will be carried out in January, but here we are. This is an important opportunity to start suggesting. Of course, also in the light of the 3 slides that I presented for the 3 networks scoping workshops. And of course, if there are news from funders and from other networks regarding similar pertinent initiatives that we should be aware of, or any news are important. Thank you for your attention and open to questions or following debate. Thank you.
So I think now I got it right. You will see the presentation and not the PowerPoint. So the work package 3, and part of this work package is one task is the call office. So the call office will be not only operated by Jülich, but also by MASAF and BLE. Actually, at the moment, it's planned that the 3 partners of the Green Era Hub, Jülich, MASAF, and BLE, will take over one call each. And for the first call, Jülich will take over the lead of the call office. So what is a call office meant? So for those who are new in the funding and European funding scheme of the ARNETs, so a call office is meant to manage the entire call from the launch, evaluation to selection and monitoring of the call. And it's also the contact point for all requests regarding the call. So the second very much important body of a call is the funders board, which consists of the funding bodies of this call. And those funders board is bound to each other by a memorandum of understanding, which is signed in this case by the funders and the Green Era Hub to establish and underpin the core procedure the Green Era Hub and their funders have agreed on. And the funders board is also the decision-making body for each call. So the funders board will also select then the proposals based on the ranking list and availability of funds, and they will also agree on the call procedure and timeline. So the Green Era Hub will make suggestions and proposals to how the call will be conducted, and the agreement will be then done by you as funders, because you are the one who put the money in and will fund the project at the end. So which documents are basically needed for the calls? So we will like to collect them at the later stage when we have the scope and the topic secured for the first call. We will collect financial commitment, which means that each funder submit an initial financial commitment to the call office, which will be mostly done by email. And in this commitment, the funder declares to which amount he will contribute funds to this call, and which will be then shared available to support the project. And then, as said in the previous slide, the Memorandum of Understanding. So the Memorandum of Understanding is a legally not binding document which will be signed by the funders and the Green Era Hub. So by each funder being part of the funders board and contributing funds to this call. And within the MOU, there will be the call procedure described and all the application, evaluation, funding procedures. So everything which is surrounded by this call or every procedure will be defined within the MOU. And then we have the funders regulation. So each funder defines its own national or funder-specific regulation for each call, because we have general eligibility criteria for each call, but nonetheless, we also have specific funders regulations. And in these regulations, for example, the funding limit is defined, and maybe some national or funder-specific requirements for this call, and they will be defined within that regulations. And if the funder-specific criteria differ from the general eligibility criteria, the funder-specific criteria has to be respected by each applicant from that respect who will seeking funds from then respective funders. One example is if we have, for example, a call with 3 topics, then some funders may only support 2 out of those 3 topics. This would be then defined within the funders regulations. And the last document, which is the core document for each call, is the call announcement, The call announcement is a PDF file or a Word document which describes all the call procedure modalities of this call, from launch to submission to evaluation and selection. This is written by the call office and then approved by US funders, and it will be provided to the funders, to the applicants, as well as to the evaluators, whereas the evaluators will also receive a separate document, guidelines for evaluation of proposals. But the call announcement itself is the core document. There also the timeline of the call will be described. So what else do we have on general modalities for each call? So the budget, so we will have a virtual common pot scheme for financing. So this means that each funder will fund only the activities of their respective eligible beneficiaries. So to say it very simple, if there are German applicants, only the BMBF will fund those German applicants. And the initial budget of each funder will be published within the call document. This is also important for you, so that your initial budget will be published in the call documents. And specific funder regulations of each funder will be defined in the funding regulations. So, for example, maximum funding for each project per funder, and so on. And then, which is also important, after the selection of the project, there will be a contract only between the funders and their specific beneficiaries. So each funder will enter into the contracting process after the selection of projects with their beneficiaries, who will seek funds from them. So, and the beneficiaries who will receive funds from the funders will have to comply with respective funder regulations. And all contracts and funding procedures will then remain full responsibility of each individual funder. So then I think Stefano has already indicated within his presentation. So there are different core procedures we would like to propose to you as a Green Era Hub. So there are 3 different ones. So there's a one-step procedure. We can also offer a one-step procedure with a pre-registration and a 2-step procedure. All procedures have some advantages and disadvantages. I will shortly go through them. So one-step procedure is pretty much clear. So the applicants will submit a full proposal only. The advantage of this one is a very short timeline. So you can launch the call and then have a 4-month submission timeline or a 3-month submission timeline. The disadvantage is that you have the risk of oversubscription of single funders. So, and you do not know until the end of the submission deadline how many proposals are to be expected from each country. Then you have the 2-step procedure. I will just jump to the 2-step because it's easier to explain than the one in the middle. So the 2-step procedure means that applicants submit a pre-proposal and then a full proposal, and both of them will be evaluated. So the disadvantage is clear. You have a longer timeline because you have a pre-proposal phase, then the pre-proposal will be evaluated, and then you invite some of them to submit a full proposal. The advantage, or the big advantage, is that you have a low oversubscription because you have the pre-selection phase. You can already exclude pre-proposals where you think that there will be a risk of oversubscription of certain funders. And due to the pre-proposal step, you have a pretty much good idea how many full proposals will be submitted at the end. A kind of a solution which is between 1- and 2-step procedure is a 1-step procedure with pre-registration. In this case, the applicants will register their proposal first, which will not undergo an evaluation. So the pre-registration would mean that they register their proposal by submitting a summary, the consortium, and the initial budget, and then they will submit the full proposal. So we have a similar timeline like in a 1-step procedure, so a short timeline. You still have the risk of an oversubscription, but in this case, you will be well known in advance which country or which funder will have an oversubscription, because you have the pre-registration step, and if you see that a lot of proposals have been pre-registered from one country, you know, okay, this one will be oversubscribed. And you have kind of a good idea how many proposals will be submitted because you have the pre-registration step. So these are the 3 procedures we can offer to you. So I mean, this needs to be discussed when the scoping and the topic is secured. Then you will go into discussion which procedure you would like to prefer as funder. And then briefly speaking about the submission. So the submission of proposals will be done by our well-established ULISH submission tool. I think most of you funders know this one. So we have a platform, we call it submission tool, but actually this platform will also cover evaluation, selection, and also the monitoring of the proposals and the projects later on. And the call office will serve as technical help desk and all general inquiries for the call during the submission phase. And we will also offer during the submission phase a webinar for the applicants. And what each funder has to secure is a contact point where the people can ask specific funder regulations or specific national regulations. To the proposal content, so we would like to propose to you that we will have a proposal content with reference to the European Horizon Europe regulations, so that the proposal consists of a summary, the key data of each proposal of project, a working description, a statement to the ethical compliance, a data management, communication, dissemination plan, as well as a partner description and letter of commitments if appropriate for partners who will participate in own contribution. So we would highly recommend to stick to the Horizon Europe regulations in this case for the proposal content, because it's a well-established system and also the applicants are pretty much familiar by now with that one. So the evaluation will be conducted by getting the proposals evaluated by an international evaluation committee. So this will be international experts from the fields of the proposed topics for each call. So 3 experts will evaluate one proposal, and the international evaluation panel will also meet then in an online or in a physical evaluation meeting and discuss the individual scores, and then will agree on consensus score for each proposal and build up a ranking list based on them. So the criteria for the evaluation, there we also would like to highly recommend to use the Horizon Europe criteria for evaluation, which is scientific excellence, relevance and impact and implementation of each proposal. And each criterion will then be scored individual by each evaluator, including also written feedback. So the scoring will be from 0 to 5 for each criterion with full scores. And we will also apply, or would recommend to have 2 thresholds to apply it, which will be a 3 out of 5 threshold for each criterion and the total score threshold of 10 out of 15. So this is a well-established system known by the applicants as well as by a lot of experts already. And the selection will be done by the funders board. So the funders board will receive the ranking list and then will select proposals based on the ranking list and also on the availability of funds. And the further aspects on funding options are further defined in the MOU. So this can differ between each call depending on the funders board. And there's always the possibility to increase budget at this stage of the selection process. So if a funder feels that he would like to fund more proposals, he can always increase its budget. The selection meeting will be most likely a face-to-face meeting. And the select word is really important for those who have already conducted calls within the ERA NETSIS. So the selection procedure is not bound to the Horizon Europe criteria. So it's quite flexible in selecting proposals. It will be conducted similar to additional calls within ERANET co-funds. And this is due because there's no European co-funding in those calls. So this is all I can say to you about the technical modalities at this point, and I'm happy to answer all your questions if there are any.